last semester I was writing this paper about these alternative gender identities beyond men and women that existed in cultures all over the world. Literally all over the world.
I feel that.
Until
really?
Western colonizers. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, it's
Yeah.
literally Western colonizers and like Christianity
Yes.
that like enforced these binary Western gender roles on all of these cultures, erasing these other genders which existed in societies before, had names, had like roles in society.
And usually quite like focal, like very important roles, like spiritual roles,
Often,
like like magical roles, like things, medicinal roles, like things about healing and like connection, like I don't know. I feel like that says something.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Last semester, O'sha and I took this like philosophy class about like Judith Butler. What was the name of the psychology?
It wasn't gender trouble.
It wasn't gender trouble. It's just like this psychic life of power.
Oh yeah.
And like, that was the first time I took the courage to even research about like past before colonization. Were there any non-binary people? And I was specifically looking at Africa because there's this like trauma, so much hate towards one thing that I was like, where is this coming from and why is it like so rooted in like generational things? So I looked through and I found out that like throughout the whole continent there was like a plethora of different like sexes, genders, everything existed then. There were like different marriage or like ceremonial like marriage ritual rites and passages that accommodated everything. And then find out that like it started when the Portuguese came in and there was a lot of like hate shed and a lot of people killed. So I feel like if I tap into like my mom's and like all my family's fears of being these ways, that I'm carrying on this cycle of generational trauma that they don't even know they're experiencing because they've been so like caught up in it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And like you have to do your research to know where that attitude is coming from, you know?
Seriously.
Yeah.
So as they like, you know, as I feel like even when they want to accept me just because of this one thing they can't, I get solace because I feel for how fearful they are for me.
Yeah.
Like I stopped, like it takes time, like it really takes time to separate someone's anger towards you, but like stepping back being like, it's not, you don't understand why you're even feeling this way. You just know that it's wrong. And you haven't even tried to look over, feel it. There's so many like closeted like people back home. They're so heavily holding on into things and like destroying themselves almost and not allowing themselves to even like feel things. Like they repress themselves so much that it's quite sad in some ways, which makes me feel more free in others in the sense that like I'm not allowing myself to fall into that. Honestly, so I really hope one day, you know, the continent begins to relax. Like, there hasn't even been like a march back home because they tried to last summer in Nigeria, but unfortunately, like, they were threats with the police and all these things. It's illegal, you get killed on the spot or arrested, but like, who knows if you're even really gonna get out of the thing. Yeah, so it's just very harsh environment, which I understand the fears of my family because of that.
Yeah.
But it's more or less like when people now get to a point where it's like, I'll never accept you, and I'm just like, well, so you're telling me if I didn't say anything, you would have, like, this is just one thing, like.
Yeah.
But you know.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's really true. I feel like the thing that a lot of people that are like homophobic or transphobic or like any kind of phobic, forget, whatever, is like, this is who you are regardless of if you tell them. Like, them having an opinion on something really doesn't change like the reality of a situation. The only other option is to be like self-repressed for your whole life, but that doesn't change still who you are. So it's not about like, except obviously like this doesn't change the experience of it, like person to person. For instance, like you with your family, like, it doesn't change to know this. But for an internal like way of seeing it, like their opinions on like whatever who you are has no effect on that existing or not. So them choosing like not to accept you is them choosing to only accept a version of you that isn't real. Like they're attached to something that literally does not exist. And in that way, like that's the same thing of like people like falling in love, or of seeing people that they want to see, and holding like some certain expectation that you can't live up to because it's not you. Like, I don't know, it actually doesn't make any logical sense, which is why it makes sense to hear about like generational trauma.
Right.
Because it's coming from like an internalized place of like something happened like way down the line when colonization happened, and there was a fear instilled because of death being the other option, and it just keeps going and going and going because there's like this internal like tension and things like that.
So I was like throwing hearts at the camera. The camera crew over there. Shout out to Kavi.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kavi.
And he's asleep.
Aw, what a sweetie. I love that he's just like, this is where I want to be.
Can't talk.
That's great. If you are in a different part of the country or the world, I would love for you to sit down with some trans friends of yours and talk about gender, talk about what it is about being trans that you think about a lot, what impacts you, and be part of this conversation together, because it's healing to talk about these things.